Hey guys, hope you're having a good week. If you're an acoustic guitar player, sooner or later you're going to find yourself accompanying another musician. That could be a vocalist or another instrument. And whilst that seems like quite an easy thing to do, there are actually quite a few challenges contained there. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you 5 essential tips on how to become a more creative acoustic guitar accompanist. The first tip is to learn how to embellish chords, because if you're playing one chord for 4, 8, 12 bars or more, that can become very boring very quickly. And I mean boring for the other musician you're playing with, the audience, and for you yourself. So learning how to embellish any chord you're playing is a really useful tactic. We all know how to embellish things like a simple D major chord. We learned those things early on, so you want to be able to then put that onto any other open chord you're playing. For example, on a G, or an A major, or even on a C. And what you're doing is you're just creating that little bit of melodic content on the top usually, normally on strings 1 and 2, just to give the chord more interest and to keep things moving along. The second tip is to add some colour to your chords to make them sound more interesting. And a great way of doing this is to use something called chord enrichment. And this means that we're going to add in notes that don't usually belong to a simple major or minor chord. So for example, a D major chord contains a root 3rd and 5th, which are D, F sharp and A. And a great note to add to these is called the 9th. The 9th is just a note that's a tone above the root. A tone above D is E. So we take a D major chord, and we add in a 9th, an E. And all of a sudden that chord's got a more interesting sound. The chord I'm playing there is called a D add 9 incidentally, because I'm adding the 9th in. I'm not taking the 3rd away. It's not this chord, which is a D sus2. Also sounds great, but it's a different effect. And you can do that on any open chord you're playing or any chord in general. So for example, on an E major, the note that's a tone above the root is the F sharp, which I can play here, fret 4, string 4. Or on an A major. In that case, I'm looking for a B, again, a tone above the root. Do the same thing on a G, simple G major. In that case, I'll add in an A, again, tone above the root. And the one that we normally play without even thinking about it is a C add 9. So here's a standard C major chord. In that case, we add a D and we get this shape. So it's worth going through all the chords you already know in all keys and all positions and finding that 9th and then adding it in. You get the add 9 chord, which adds a lot of colour to what you're playing. The third tip is to think dynamically, and by that I mean changes in volume and tone, because if you're accompanying someone and you're playing at the same volume or the same tone all the way through, you're not going to give them the most interesting backdrop to perform against. So a lot of this is going to come from how you practice with the picking hand, and every time you play a chord or you play a new idea, think about all the dynamics you can apply to it, from loud to soft, or from a warm tone to a more brittle tone. Simple example, take an E major chord and pick every single string, and then play with a really low dynamic, really quietly. And then get used to applying more pressure so you can add a higher dynamic, more volume. And then also think about all the tonal ranges that you have on the instrument, from the bridge, where we get that brittle, what's called pizzicato sound, to the sound hole where we normally play, all the way over the neck itself to get that warmer tone. For example, to what we're used to, and then the real warmth. And all of that is going to make your playing as colourful and as interesting as possible for everyone that's listening and working with you. Tip number 4 is to learn how to write intros, because there are many times when you'll be starting a piece completely unaccompanied. And for me, the master of this is James Taylor, who creates these short melodic fragments which serve to set the scene before the song itself begins. So the obvious tip there is to learn as many James Taylor intros as you can, but let me show you a quick in the style of his playing so you can get a general idea of how it works. So in something like that, we're using many of the devices we've looked at already, from chord embellishment and enrichment, also to adding in some different rhythms and that general arpeggiating pattern to break the chord open. Let me play that really slowly so you can see what's going on and get it under your fingers. And finally, tip number 5, this is the one that can take a lot of time, and that's to learn about register. Register means where you play your chords, and this is how you get texture into your playing, from those low sounds all the way to the higher sounds at the neck. The thing here is that you have to spend time learning where all your chords are all over the fingerboard. So if you think E major, you can think E major down here, up here, even up here, and further, and everything in between. The way we do this is by learning triads, roots, thirds and fifths stacked together and then placed together in different inversions. It's time consuming, but when you get the triads under your fingers, all of a sudden the instrument throws up all these different possibilities for sound. So it's worth putting the time in to learn texture and register for the chords. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you found some useful ideas in there, and please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can tell you about when the next video is being released. See you next time.